Welcome to the latest edition of Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. I'm Anthony T, as this is going to be an edition full of rants and news. Next segment, I will have wrestling news. I'll talk about AEW in New Japan's Forbidden Door. Plus, I may have another news article or two to talk about as well. Then I talk about the recent Halloween guests announced for the upcoming Silver Scream Con that's taking place September 13th through the 15th in Worcester, Massachusetts at the DCU Center. Why am I talking about the Halloween guests and not every other guest that's been announced for Silver Scream Con, as that lineup looks very good, as I can't wait to be at Silver Scream Con this year? Because I'm more excited over a car than the Halloween guests that are coming over to Silver Scream Con. Am I wrong to be excited about a car? Because you see a lot of these cars at conventions, and I'm not one of those people that get excited for cars. But this car I'm excited for. I'll talk more about that in the featured segment in this episode. And sure, there's a lot of great guests coming to Silver Scream Con, but I'm more excited about a car than the Halloween guests. That's for sure. Maybe because I met two of the three of them already. I'll go more into that later. Then in What's Anthony T Watching, I will be reviewing a film from a director who previously had a film reviewed on this podcast, and it didn't go so well. Now you're asking yourself, why are you reviewing a film from a director that you didn't like his last film? Well, his latest film is based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft. That will probably get my attention. So I decided to review that film. And buy the Blu-ray too. You'll hear my review of that film in What's Anthony T Watching. But first, the news. Now, what should I start off with here? Seriously, people. Should I start off with one of my favorite franchises at the moment? Or should I start off with one of the most talked about topics on this podcast? I'm going to think about it. Should I? Yeah, let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about the most talked about topic on this podcast. That's right. Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions. Now, seriously here, this is a move I don't like. Well, apparently Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions is starting a Megan universe. Now, do we really need another universe right now? Because seriously, we don't need a Megan universe. Let's just wait until the next movie comes out to see if that succeeds. Then we can talk about a Megan universe. Seriously, I don't like it when films get so big that we have to start universe building after the first film. And this is definitely the case here with the Megan universe. I know, Megan 2 comes out next year. But we're already talking about a Megan universe before that film comes out. It's like Jason Blum is thinking Megan 2 is already going to be a mega hit. To the point that we need a universe. We don't, Jason Blum. Seriously. I do not need to see a new universe until you establish the first film. And by doing that, have at least 2 successful films under its belt. Now, Megan 2 is supposed to be out June of next year. But now they've announced a new film that's going to be in the same vein of Megan. It's a film called Soulmate. Instead of the A, it's an 8. It is spelled SOULM, the number 8, TE. Now, this is coming from BloodyDisgusting.com. This is being billed as a 90s style erotic thriller with a technological twist, which is going to be different for Megan. That's for sure. As it's going to be more relationship balanced instead of like best friend type balanced. But still, do we really need a Megan universe? The plotline of this movie is a man acquires an AI android to cope with the loss of his recently deceased wife. In an attempt to create a truly sentinel partner, he inadvertently turns a harmless love bot into a deadly soulmate. Yeah, talk about technology gone wrong again. I don't know what this is gonna bring to the universe, seriously. As this, I'm afraid, could be like a rehash of Megan, but in a different tone. And that's the danger with this film. That it's just a more mature version of Megan. And if it falls into that trap, then it's not going to be a good film. Seriously. Because I do not need to see a more mature version of that film. Because I literally don't think Megan and that series of films needs a universe. Seriously. We don't need it. We just don't. I just don't see the need for that type of film. Quite frankly. You're pretty much doing the same film. It's not like the Conjuring universe where you can go into all these different demonic possessions and everything. Because they're like different stories, different types of demonic possessions. You got deadly ghosts, you got possessed dolls, etc. You get different things in that universe. Megan, you just have the same thing, a killer AI. So I don't know what Jason Blum and everyone else at Blumhouse is thinking. But then again, these are the same guys that brought us Night Swim. Probably the worst film of this year, period. And this is coming from a guy that has seen Madam Web. As Night Swim makes Madam Web look like a 5-star film. That's how bad Night Swim is. But I digress. Continuing the Jason Blum and Blumhouse Productions news. They've recently announced that they are going to be working with director Lee Cronin on his next movie project. Yes, that's the same Lee Cronin that directed Evil Dead Rise, which was my best film of last year. Best horror film of last year, to be exact. But still, it was a very good horror film. And it really brought back the Evil Dead franchise to respectability. As I really didn't think that film would be as great of a film that it is. It is a great film. People should check this film out. Seriously. If you haven't yet. If you're an Evil Dead purist, you need to check this film out. I know you guys don't like Evil Dead films without Ash. But if you love the Evil Dead series, check this film out. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Lee Cronin will be directing his next film, which is set for release in 2026. Actually, April 17th, 2026 to be exact. As it's going to be produced by James Wan and Jason Blum. There's been no title for this film yet, as Lee Cronin went on X to post a page that says original screenplay by Lee Cronin. And on the bottom it says Atomic Monster and Blumhouse. You can check Lee Cronin's Twitter or X, whatever you call it these days. But it's glad to see he's getting work, because Evil Dead Rise was a great horror film. And I really think it could be a benefit to Blumhouse. Seriously. To work with someone who is competent. Not someone who makes a film about a killer pool. But someone who can actually write a horror film and direct a horror film that brings intensity and great characters. It is a great hiccup for Blumhouse Productions. Seriously. They needed someone like him for their future films. Because I am not impressed with Blumhouse lately. The whole Halloween debacle, which I haven't forgotten about. And remember Halloween Ends? That debacle? Haven't forgotten about that film. I haven't forgotten about Night Swim. The only thing they've done recently I think that's good was Megan, to my knowledge. Blumhouse Productions can do great horror films. It's when they decide to do stupid projects like Night Swim, it's where Blumhouse Productions gets itself into trouble. They should be focused more on quality, not quantity. Because quality horror films will bring people to the theaters and will get people in seats. Not stupid films like Night Swim. But I'm glad to see Lee Cronin getting to work with two of the greatest horror minds of this generation, in Jason Blum and James Wan, as they'll be producing his film. So I can't wait for this film. With James Wan, I know I'm probably going to get a good film. He's usually good on bringing quality, not quantity. So it's nice to see James Wan be one of the executive producers on Lee Cronin's next film. I'm really hoping it's just as great as Evil Dead Rise. Also, I have some Terrifier news. Actually, I have 2 bits of Terrifier news here. I don't know which one I'm going to start off with because I'm excited for both of them. One because it deals with Terrifier 3, and one because it deals with me being a Funko collector. So, same situation as a Blumhouse. Should I talk about Terrifier 3 first? Or should I talk about Terrifier Funko? I'm going to talk about Terrifier Funkos. I'm such a Funko addict. I'm going to talk about Funkos, seriously. Because I love them. Any popular horror film, I'm going to get Funkos for. And I'm a big Funko addict. I admit it. Now, Facebook pages Funko Pop Hunters and Funko Pop News leaked out images for some upcoming Terrifier Funko Pops. As there is going to be 3 of them. First one will be Art the Clown as Art the Clown. Second one will be a bloodied Art the Clown. And the third one is Art the Clown riding a tricycle. So we're getting 3 Funkos from Terrifier. I did not have that on my bingo card for 2024. In fact, I didn't even think they would even do Terrifier Funkos, quite frankly. But this just shows you how popular the franchise has gotten since its beginning, in its inception. To the point now that we have Funko figures. They're getting into the act. You know you have a big horror property if Funko comes calling. Because they have literally every Funko of every big horror franchise, pretty much. All serious aside, I really cannot wait to own these Funkos, as I really plan on purchasing all 3 of them. That's how big a fan I am about Terrifier. Besides the X franchise, Terrifier is the second most favorite franchise of mine in the last 10 or 15 years or so. I love this franchise to death, and I really cannot wait for Terrifier 3 to come out in October. And speaking about Terrifier 3, there's recent casting for the film, as Damien Leone let out that another horror icon has joined the cast of Terrifier 3. First you had Daniel Roebuck from Rob Zombie's films as Santa Claus. You got Tom Savini in an undisclosed role. And now you have, wait for it, Jason Patrick in an undisclosed role. That's right, Jason Patrick from the Lost Boys. That was a surprising casting. I did not see that casting coming. Seriously, literally. As I literally thought Damien Leone would continue with the slasher genre route in casting these people from various slashers from the past. Let's face it, Tom Savini, legendary makeup effects artist, was in the original Maniac. Daniel Roebuck was in Final Destination, and in Rob Zombie's The Devil's Rejects in Halloween 1 and 2. Rob Zombie's versions, not the originals, everyone. But Jason Patric? That one came out of left field, because The Lost Boys is a vampire film. And I'm kind of really surprised that Damien Leone really cast Jason Patric. Don't get me wrong, I think The Lost Boys is one of the greatest vampire films ever made. It had Patrick, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Kiefer Sutherland, Diana Wiest, the late Edward Herrmann. That was such a great film, and a great vampire film. But I was really surprised that he went this route in casting Jason Patric, because I really think he must be a fan of The Lost Boys. And there's nothing wrong with that. Seriously. I have no problems with this casting at all. Especially with that teaser image. I'm not going to go into that image because it could be spoilery. But if you go to bloodydisgusting.com, find the article, pay very close attention to detail in that still. As it really, I think, gives you a clue to who Jason Patric is playing in this film. And that's going to be a very interesting one. Seriously. Because it's going to be a kind of a very key character. I think it is. But I'll let you make the judgment for yourself. Because I really think Jason Patric is playing a key character in this film. Probably in a small role, but a very crucial character. And you can have crucial characters have small roles. I've seen this in other films too. Look at Twin Peaks, for example, the TV show. There was a character named Bob. Very, very small role, never spoke dialogue, was more like an entity, but was a very crucial character in the mythology of that series and to the events that goes on during each season of that series. So that's what I mean by small role, but plays a major part. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me. Terrifier 3 hits theaters October 11th. And that's film news. I will be back with wrestling news in a moment. Every day there's a family struggling with hospital bills to care for their sick child who is fighting an illness. There's a woman who is fighting breast cancer and is having trouble making ends meet while paying for their treatment. And there are burn victims that are going through treatments to heal their deep wounds. There is a charity in the horror community that helps these people. Scares That Care is an organization that helps families deal with the bills for their child. They help women get the treatment they need to fight breast cancer, and they help people who are dealing with severe burns get the help they need to heal. Scares That Care is a 100% volunteer organization and 501c3 nonprofit charity that is dedicated to helping these people in fighting real monsters. To find out more information or to donate to Scares That Care, you can go to www.scaresthatcare.org. Every donation helps Scares That Care fight real monsters. Welcome back. Now, last segment was all about horror news. This segment will be all about wrestling news, as this is a horror and wrestling podcast. And yes, I have some wrestling news. First off, I'm going to talk about the recent AEW pay-per-view with New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door 2024 that took place in Elmont, New York at the UBS Arena on June 30th. Now, I'm not going to go into this pay-per-view in full detail here, but I'm just going to go over the matches, some highlights, and some thoughts about the main event. as I'm not going to go over a 15-match card in detail. Seriously. On the pre-show, we had at least 5 matches on the pre-show. I cannot remember an AEW show that had 5 matches, but we had 5 matches. First up, former Ring of Honor TV champion Kyle Fletcher defeated Serpentico. I say former because Kyle Fletcher lost his title recently at a CMLL Arena Mexico event, but he rebounded from that loss and beat Serpentico in a quick match. Then the Kings of the Black Throne of Malachi Black and Brody King defeated Tomohiro Ishii and Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong and Gabe Kidd, and Private Party for the win in a Four Corners tag team match. Then Willow Nightingale and Tam Nakano defeated Chris Statlander and Momo Wanabe. As I apologize if I'm getting these Japanese women's pronunciations wrong. Then in their own Hot Cup tournament first round match on the women's side, Mariah May defeated Soraya. Then in the main event of the pre-show, the Lucha Brothers and Mystico defeated Los Inconables de Japón. Then we started off the main show of Forbidden Door, where MJF defeated Hechicero. The Elite of Matthew Jackson, Nicholas Jackson, and Kazuchika Okada defeated the Acclaimed and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Bryan Danielson defeated Shingo Takagi in a men's own Hot Cup tournament first round match. Timeless Toni Storm defeated Mia Shirakawa to retain her AEW Women's Championship. Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Orange Cassidy, which had a great ending to the match. Samoa Joe, Hook, and Shibata defeated Chris Jericho, Big Bill, and Jeff Cobb. Jack Perry defeated Konosuke Takeshita. Mark Briscoe, Dante Martin, Leo Rush, and El Phantasmo to become the new TNT champion. In a ladder match, Mercedes Moné defeated Stephanie Vasquez to become the new NJPW Strong Women's Champion and retain the TBS Championship. Tetsuya Naito defeated Jon Moxley to become the new IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And in the main event of Forbidden Door, Swerve Strickland defeated Will Ospreay to retain the AEW World Championship. News coming out of the event, AEW officially announced their return to Arthur Ashe Stadium for Dynamite and Collision TV taping on September 25th. During the TNT Championship match, Leo Rush suffered an injury when Takeshita powerbombed him through a ladder. This was found out when Rush had to cancel a July 4th appearance for Beyond Wrestling. Dr. Britt Baker made her return to AEW TV at the end of the Mercedes Moné Stephanie Vasquez match. So she's back on AEW TV after a long layoff. After that, AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling announced that they will be running a joint show January 5th, the day after New Japan Pro Wrestling presents Wrestle Kingdom, in a show called Wrestle Dynasty, which will feature stars from New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Elite Wrestling, Ring of Honor, CMLL, and Stardom. That's going to be an interesting show, seriously. The fact that it takes place a day after New Japan Pro Wrestling signature event, which will be very interesting for the Wrestle Kingdom show as well this year. And that will take place at the Tokyo Dome. Now, for favorite matches on this card, I really highly recommend you check out Shingo Takagi versus Bryan Danielson, mixture of strong style and technical wrestling, as this was a very good match. I think one of the best matches in the Own Hot tournament so far in both brackets, as both of these wrestlers really went all out for this match. Another one was Zack Sabre Jr. versus Orange Cassidy. It was a really good match, as Sabre Jr. and Orange Cassidy had very good chemistry in the ring. This match also features an insane submission finish from Zack Sabre Jr. This proves to you why Zack Sabre Jr. may not be known to a lot of wrestling fans inside the US, but he's truly one of the best technical wrestlers in the world, on par with Bryan Danielson. Definitely. Just see his work in New Japan Pro Wrestling, as those two might be the best technical wrestlers in the business. And of course, the main event, Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland. And I will go into this match, as this was a fast-paced action match. Both of them worked really well together, great back-and-forth action. This would also have Swerve hit a Swerve stomp from a top rope to the Spanish announcer's table. And that was insane. More insane was the table didn't break. Ospreay would hit a Stormbreaker for 2. Then we would get shenanigans as Ospreay would accidentally hit the ref. Don Callis would bring a screwdriver to the ring to hand to Ospreay to use on Swerve Strickland. But first, Don Callis tries to hit Nana, but Nana takes him out. Ospreay tries to use the screwdriver on Nana, but decides against it. This distraction and momentary of judgment allows Swerve Strickland to hit the Swerve Stomp for 2, then a house call for 2, then another house call, and his finisher for the win. In a great match. Literally probably one of the best pay-per-view main events that AEW has produced. And yes, that was the right call to have Swerve Strickland win this match. Because if Swerve Strickland did not beat Will Ospreay, he would have been known as a placeholder champion. Instead, he gets that big signature win in his title reign. Every title reign is defined by a big signature win. And Swerve beating Will Ospreay here does a lot for Swerve Strickland. If Will Ospreay beat Swerve Strickland, it wouldn't have done much for Will Ospreay, quite frankly. He's so super over with the crowd as is that giving him the title would do nothing. So it was best to keep the title on Swerve Strickland, let him continue his title reign, let him go to Wembley Stadium with the title for All In, as he'll be facing the American Dragon Bryan Danielson at Wembley Stadium in what should be a very good match on paper. Seriously. I cannot wait for it. You could have had either him in Strickland or Hangman Adam Page in Strickland, and it wouldn't have been a bad move. Seriously. But I think AEW made the right call in having Bryan Danielson main event All In at Wembley Stadium, as he's a bigger name. Plus, he deserves it. This is the last year of his career, wrestling full time, and I think he deserves a big time marquee match at a historic venue like Wembley Stadium. You can go back and do Hangman Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland at any time. In fact, after Swerve Strickland, who probably will beat Bryan Danielson, you could probably do Adam Page for the title at All Out. So, either way, there wasn't a bad choice for the main event for All In. But I kind of prefer Bryan Danielson over Hangman Adam Page because, well, Bryan Danielson's been in the business for this long, and he's still putting on great caliber matches, and have another big name that Swerve Strickland can beat in his title reign. So there's no problem with this. Seriously. None whatsoever. Speaking of All In, there was another match announced on the July 10th edition of Dynamite, as they also had the women's finals of the Own Hot Cup tournament, as the winner of the men's and women's Own Hot tournaments get to take on the world champion at All In, which I think is a novel concept. Seriously, it gives the tournament more value to main event AEW's biggest show of the year, like WWE, where you have to win the Royal Rumble to main event WWE's biggest show of the year. In the Women's Owen Hart Cup final, Mariah May defeated Willow Nightingale to win that tournament. Then, in a shocking turn of events after the match, she turned on Toni Storm. For months, her and Toni Storm have been pretty much inseparable on AEW television, and probably one of the best parts of AEW television. But man, that heel turn literally was probably one of the best heel turns of the year, if not the best heel turn of the year. It started when Mariah May started to run up to the stage to grab the Owen Hart belt. That's what you get for winning the tournament, the belt and the cup. Toni Storm came up there to join her, but was met with Mariah May hitting Toni Storm with the belt, busting Toni Storm open. That was brutal. Literally brutal. Then she brutally attacked Toni Storm's butler, Luther, beating him with the belt, then nailing him with the belt, sending him off the stage. Then she grabbed Toni Storm's shoe and just kept repeatedly nailing Toni Storm on the bloody forehead with that shoe, making that gash very bloody. It was such a surreal scene, and probably one of the most effective heel turns of the year, if not the best heel turn of the year. It literally made the MJF heel turn on Daniel Garcia look like a poorly executed heel turn. That's how brutal that heel turn was. Seriously. It was a level of violence that nobody saw coming. And this is a storyline that's been going on for probably about almost 2 years now. Ever since Mariah May joined AEW, she's been with Toni Storm. Now she turns on her. I think it was the right call to do it, even though they had another major heel turn with MJF the week before. You have to stop building up that all-in match with Toni Storm. You're going to have to turn Mariah May heel at some point. This was perfect. And if they did it at any other time, it wouldn't have been that perfect. Just that horrifying visual at the end of Dynamite tells you what you need to know about how effective this heel turn was. It was brutal. I didn't even expect it to be brutal, quite honestly. I literally thought it'll end up with a tag match or something, but that has to be one of the most brutal heel turns in AEW history, seriously. And that really makes this match really much more worth watching now. Because you got the Mercedes Moné Dr. Britt Baker match, and you figured that was going to overshadow this match. Now, I don't know which one is going to overshadow which one. Seriously. The Mercedes Moné Britt Baker match, that's probably going to happen at All In. We'll have the Star Power match. The Mariah May Toni Storm match will have the storyline match going all the way back to when Mariah May started in AEW. And they've done a great job building Mariah May, as I really think she has the perfect package to be one of the future women in that division. She's very good in the ring. She can convey her character very well. And she really does a great job every time she's on TV. That's going to be a really great and interesting match coming up at All In. I said I would have more wrestling news, but we're way over, so that's the news.
Welcome to Dark Discussions, your place for the discussion of horror film, fiction, and all that's fantastic. A weekly podcast where the discussion is about the most recent horror and genre films. Intelligent talk on a genre that deserves intelligence. A conversation between co-hosts discussing not only the film, but also the connotation that the directors and screenwriters are trying to articulate. When you want more than a review, listen to Dark Discussions.
And speaking of perception, there's just one more scene I want to talk about, which is after Caleb discovers that Kyoto's a robot. Kyoto kind of peels off her skin, showing him what's underneath.
Now, wait a minute. I know where you're going with this, but tell me you weren't already thinking this 15 minutes earlier in the film. Exactly what he's thinking at that moment.
Which is he's a robot, too.
Oh, I considered the possibility.
Right, and that's what I like, is the fact that the writers were smart enough to know that this is what the audience would be thinking.
We've all seen Blade Runner.
Right, exactly.
www.darkdiscussions.com, wherever podcasts are found.
Welcome back. Now I'm getting ready for con season here, as usually the cons in the New England area, the big ones take place usually between September and November. Okay, July, August if you count Terrifier as well. So I'm really getting ready for that season. And especially September, because usually that's where all the big horror cons happen, as they're all bunched together again. Now, I'm not going to go on another rant like I did on one of the podcasts last year about it, because we all know my position on it. It sucks. Seriously. I don't like the idea of 3 cons in 3 weeks in the New England area. I don't. Especially when they're close to Massachusetts, Connecticut. I don't like that. Seriously. But that's another rant for another time, because seriously, that's gotta stop. It just drives me nuts. I'd like to go to all 3 of these cons eventually in a calendar year. So I had to pick and choose which cons to go to this September. I could have gone to TerrorCon again, but I decided not to, because, well, wasn't happy with the hotel last year I was there. Plus the fact that, really, my vacation runs around September, and it's like a big 10-day vacation. So I decided to do 2 cons in 2 weeks. So I will be doing CT Horror Fest, which is going on September 21st and 22nd at the Connecticut Convention Center in Hartford, Connecticut. I'm hoping it's a better time, because thankfully I did not go to that con last year, because I heard it was a really bad con with the venue and everything, but they changed the venues, and from what I've heard about the venue, it's a good venue, and the fact it's held a major con before. So, plus it has the Blair Witch Project reunion, and I love the Blair Witch Project a lot. So that's why I'm going there. And the week before that, I will be going to Silver Scream Con for the first time, as it's finally in Worcester, Massachusetts. I've always said if Silver Scream Con came to Worcester, Massachusetts, I would go. Because to me, that feels like the spiritual successor to Rock and Shock. Let's face it, Rock and Shock ain't there anymore. There hasn't been a horror convention in Worcester, Mass since Rock and Shock. And Silver Screen Con has that quality, and it has that backing of Ice Nine Kills, that it's a spiritual successor to Rock and Shock. It took a couple years to get to Worcester, but it's finally there, where it belongs. Don't get me wrong, it's just the first 2 Silver Scream Cons are like way too far, plus the fact that I'm not a fan of hotel conventions. Even though I'm starting to give in to hotel conventions again, since I've been to Monster Mania this year and had a good time there, unlike my last time there. So I'm feeling a little more comfortable about hotel conventions. But at the time, I did not feel comfortable going to a hotel horror convention, because as big as I thought Silver Scream Con would be in that hotel. It would be like Monster Mania level. And this is a convention that I've been wanting to go to, seriously. But I just couldn't get myself to the fact that it's taking place in a hotel. And I had a feeling it might be a Monster Mania level convention where it just gets too overcrowded. Which I'm doing better now at those conventions, since I got through a Monster Mania without any problems. But still, I just wasn't comfortable going to a horror convention in a hotel that was the size of a Monster Mania, like Silver Scream Con was going to be. I thought it was going to be like that. Seriously. And it only took them 2 years to get out of that hotel and finally move it to the DCU Center in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is a perfect place for this convention. Seriously. It is a perfect place. And they finally moved there. Which I'm happy. Seriously. Because I've been wanting to go to this con so bad. But this is not about me so excited about going to Silver Scream Con this September. Because I could go on and on for this. I want to get to the main topic of this segment. Now, Silver Scream Con released a bunch of guest announcements for the upcoming convention, as they dropped a bunch of Halloween announcements. The original Halloween, not the 2 other Halloween films. The original, everyone. They announced PJ Souls, whom I met a couple times, once at ScareCon New England when it was in Springfield, Mass, and at CT Horror Fest 1 year. Nick Castle, who I met at CT Horror Fest 1 year. Both very nice people. They also announced John Michael Graham. If you don't know who John Michael Graham is, he's the guy who gets stabbed by Michael Myers in the original film. If I'm spoiling the film, you really have not seen this film. You need to see this film. Seriously. It's one of the most iconic scenes in horror history. But I'm not even excited for those guests. Seriously. As the most excited thing about these new guests that I'm more excited about is the screen-used original Halloween 1978 Dr. Loomis station wagon that will be appearing at the convention all weekend long. I'm so excited about that. Which really begs the question, am I really wrong to be excited more about a car? Because seriously, I've been going to Contra over 10 years. And I've never been excited about a car in my life. Literally. In fact, I've been excited about Robert Englund coming to Rhode Island Comic Con. Or last year, going to Marlboro, Mass to TerraCon. So I can get a Robert Englund photo op. That's when I get excited. When that sort of announcement is announced. Or the Terrifier people that are announced for Silver Scream Con. Which I'm excited for. But to be excited for a car more than the guests? That's a first when it comes to guest announcements. Because Silver Scream Con will do guest announcements in waves. And this is the most exciting thing out of this wave. And I still don't know to myself if I'm wrong to think that I'm so excited over a car more than a guest. Because usually when you see cars getting announced, I know they usually get announced every year at Rhode Island Comic Con. They'll bring in the cars from Ghostbusters, Batman, Resident Evil, and some other stuff. But an actual car from a film? I've never been that excited in my life for an actual car more than an actual guest announcement in a guest announcement wave. I don't know. Seriously. Don't get me wrong. I love Halloween. It is one of my favorite horror films of all time, easily top 3 horror films ever made. But to be excited for a car more than a guess feels a little weird to me. It really just does. Seriously. You cannot ask a car for an autograph. And one of the things I like doing when these celebs announcements, I love getting autographs, I love getting photos with celebs. But a car will not give you an autograph. That is for sure. 100%. So I usually don't care for cars. Sure, I'll take pictures of them when I'm at a Comic-Con for like my album and everything. But I'm more excited about a car than guests over all the Halloween related guest announcements. There's only maybe like 2 cars I would be probably excited for. That's one of them. And that devil truck from Maximum Overdrive. That's probably the only other one I'd be excited for. And that's because that's one of the greatest guilty pleasure films ever made. With Stephen King directing. If you have not seen Maximum Overdrive, you'll see why Stephen King has not directed another film, to my knowledge. But still, it's a guilty pleasure film. Probably one of the best guilty pleasure films out there. In terms of horror films. Where it's just too insane and has no plot. But anyway, I'm still conflicted with the fact, am I wrong to be excited for a screen-used Dr. Loomis station wagon? Because seriously, I hope there's a pro photo op for that. I don't care if I have to take my own camera and have a picture inside it. I'll do it. Because that is a piece of horror history. Maybe that's why I'm excited for it. But am I wrong to be excited over a piece of horror history coming to Worcester, Massachusetts in September 13th through the 15th at the DCU Center? Am I wrong? There's other stuff that's going to be there. As I'm excited for other things at Silver Scream Con. So I really can't wait for Silver Scream Con to happen on September 13th through the 15th in Worcester, Massachusetts. As that's going to look like a very fun convention. You can follow Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show on these social media providers. At Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling on Facebook, Instagram, and the Slasher app. You can find Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast providers. You can also listen to the podcast at youtube.com/@FilmIKmedia and docdiscussions.com. What's Anthony T watching this episode? Well, I told you at the beginning of this episode that I was going to review a film from a director whose last film that came out earlier this year, which I reviewed on the podcast, didn't get such a favorable review. In fact, it got the dreaded 1-star review. I'm talking about director Chad Fernan, and he had a film earlier this year that I reviewed on the podcast called Scalper, in which I thought was really bad. Seriously. Now, why would I give a second chance to a director, especially on this podcast? Well, he has a new film out called The Old Ones, which is based from the mind of H.P. Lovecraft. And yes, if there's anything that has to do with H.P. Lovecraft, I'll probably watch it. So yours truly decided to take a chance on this one, since his last H.P. Lovecraft film, The Deep Ones, was a good film. So I was willing to give Chad Fern another chance, and in fact review his film on this podcast. Now, I'm going to read the synopsis on the back since you might have not heard about this film. It goes, in 1930, Sea Captain Russell Marsh saw the light, and for 93 years his body was not his own. Inhabited by a great old one, he committed unspeakable acts in the name of the esoteric order of Dagon. Now free, he is in search of a way to go back in time to reverse the horrors wrought upon the world, but the cult has other plans and will stop at nothing to destroy him. This is coming from the Blu-ray box of the film, as I like to read these things out when I'm doing an indie film so you get acquainted with the indie film that I'm reviewing. Now, going into this, I was hoping this would be better than Scalper, his earlier film. And yes, by far, this was way better than Scalper, for sure. As I really thought this was a very good film from Chad Furin, as he really, I think, does a good job when handling H.P. Lovecraft material, or material like that. This film starts off very good with a very cool animated sequence during the title credits. I like how they decided to go with like sort of an animated feel to it. A, probably because it cuts on budget and everything. And B, it probably would have been complicated to do it live action given the budget it had. But still, it's kind of cool that the animated sequence really does a good job setting up the story of this film, as it literally got my attention almost immediately. And it really started what would be ultimately a very good film. Seriously, for me. Because I had a really good time watching it. I think it's better than the deep ones, by far. One of the reasons why I think it's better than deep ones is the fact that this has an intense feel throughout this entire film. And it really has to go to the credit of director Chad Furin, whether he wrote it, the screenplay or directed the action sequences in this film. He does a very good job in making sure that they have such intensity to it that it keeps you interested with everything going on. As this was kind of very rare for an H.P. Lovecraft type film where there's a lot of action going on in this film. Usually in an H.P. Lovecraft film, you get some dialogue, some low points where it drags a little bit. Then you have to wonder if the dialogue, whether if the acting would carry it through to the action. But this, I got a sense that it was just intense, and I had this feeling throughout most of this film, which was good, because it kept me interested. And I liked it. It was kind of different for an H.P. Lovecraft film, as I like films that have an intense feel to it, and a gloom and doom to it too, like the typical H.P. Lovecraft film. You also have to have some gloom and doom in it, and it does have that too. But Furin really does a good job with the way he handles the action. The film has some very good creature effects for a low-budget film. I have to admit, I literally thought some of the creature effects in this film were very good. Whether the way the creatures looked, to whether how the effects were pulled off, it really had the feel that you want to see in it, like a monster film. And I really enjoyed it for the limited budget they had for it. I think they did a great job with that portion of the film, as I think that's one of the film's strong points, is the creature effects and the creature makeup. Another thing I liked was the acting. I like how Furin does a very good job making sure his cast have good chemistry with each other, how he navigates some of the film's very awkward scenes, as there are some that you would expect in a typical H.P. Lovecraft film to have that typical awkward scene of weirdness and something you would not see in a traditional horror film. But Vernon really handled those elements well, especially towards the end of that film, as it really got weird. But those scenes really worked out very well to its benefit for this film, as I was still engaged with the material and everything. So, by far, this was a better effort from Chad Vernon with the old ones, because I really liked this film a lot. I thought it was better than his other H.P. Lovecraft film, The Deep Ones, which is still a good film. But I really prefer the old ones better than the Deep Ones, as I really thought the acting was there. I thought the gore effects, the creature effects were much better. Plus the fact that it really kept my interest through the entire film. It wasn't boring. Even that weird part near the end of the film kept my interest, as sometimes those parts can turn people off. It didn't for me. So overall, if you're into H.P. Lovecraft and like the films that his works are based on, I suggest you check out the old ones, as this was a very good adaptation, as it had intense action, very good direction from Chad Fern, and a very good screenplay to go along with his direction. 4 stars. There's been some happenings over on the Film Arcade Media YouTube channel, as I started a new segment called Anthony T's Unboxings. I've already filmed like 4 segments of that. 2 of them are already up on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/FilmArcadeMedia. This is a segment where I pretty much unbox stuff that I get through the mail and everything, whether it's films, shirts, anything related to horror or films in general. It's mostly horror stuff. You may get horror shirts. I may sneak in some heavy metal music as well, so check that out. I try to keep them as short as possible, but sometimes it's impossible with all the Blu-rays and everything. It can be a long segment, so keep in mind of that. I will be doing another online review for the YouTube channel. Don't know which film yet, but that will be up after this episode is up on the YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and other podcast platforms. Don't forget to subscribe, leave comments, tell me how I'm doing. Also, visit the YouTube channel at youtube.com/FilmArcadeMedia. Feel free to leave comments on the videos. You can keep up to date with this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and the Slasher app at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Have a good day. Support indie wrestling. Support indie horror. This has been a Film Arcade Media production.